Okay, 10th grade. So we are going to continue on today. Yesterday you should have read through, or you could have read with me when we read about the French Revolution. And you should have done your comparing declarations sheet that I gave you to do. And answered the Venn diagram on the back. And then you should have written your 2 paragraphs about the French Revolution. What caused it and what happened after. Today, we're going to do several things. First, we're going to go over your assignments that you have for today that need to be finished. And then I'm actually going to go through and read your next reading with you because I think that might help y'all out some. So, we've talked about the French Revolution and you've been working on it. Yesterday, I had you compare the Declaration of Independence and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. And today, and I also told you to start this interactive timeline that I gave you in your packet. All right, so it's got these 11 events right here, and remember I told you would need to cut them out, find out information about them, and then make your timeline. So if you looked on the back of that paper, all right, it gives you an example of what you're going to be doing. So you're going to take these 11 things, you're going to cut them out. On the front, you're going to draw a picture to represent them, okay? So if you look at the example of the interactive timeline that I gave you, they use 2 sheets of paper, they draw the timeline. They have pictures on each one. You need a picture to represent each event. And then it's got the little, you can see where like they flip it up and there's your information. Okay? So it says on here, your directions. The French Revolution spanned about a decade from 1789 to 1799. Cut out the event cards below and sort them in the correct order. It's a timeline. It needs to be in the right order. All right? Then create a 2-page timeline in your notebook and paste them so that you can draw a picture on the top to symbolize the event and explain the event underneath the flap. So, like this one, if I was going to do this one, Napoleon takes power. I put them in the correct order. I cut this out. I could draw a picture of the little Napoleon Bonaparte there. All right. And then underneath it, I'm going to write what happened when he took power, when it was, what event it was. Okay? So that's your timeline. You should have started that yesterday. It's not due until Monday. It is not due until Monday, but it needs to be turned in. Today, what you're going to do, all right, you have another thing in your book, or in your packet, sorry, not your book, all right, and it says, Analyzing Resistance, Collaboration, and Neutrality in the French Revolution, okay? This is a reading assignment where you're kind of going to decide if you would be with the revolutionaries or not, or just kind of all right? So, what you're going to do, I'm going to read through this so that you understand, okay? So, directions. The French Revolution was one of the most shocking and tumultuous events in history. Its causes included the monarchy's severe debt, high taxes, poor harvests leading to a lack of food, and the influence of new political ideas and the American Revolution. Hint, hint, if you have not written your paragraph on what caused the French Revolution yet, there's some help, all right? So, it began as a movement seeking government reforms. However, it turned radical and violent, leading to the abolition of the monarchy and execution of King Louis XVI, which we read about yesterday. You are going to analyze several key events from the French Revolution. For each one, you have to place yourself in the time period and make a choice on how you would respond. Would you join the resistance, collaborate with those in power, or act as if nothing happened? If you choose to resist, you are joining those protesting against those in power. So if you are resisting those in power. Collaborating means you are supporting the leaders in power. And finally, you could choose to ignore the events going on around you and act as if nothing had happened. After reading about each event, take a couple minutes to think about how you would respond and the repercussions that decision might have. Then circle your response, then briefly describe your reasoning. So on the back of that page, all right, analyzing responses to the French Revolution, make sure your name goes up there, and then each one of these things, all right, each one of these events have a description in them, okay? So I'm going to read through those for you, okay, so you can follow along, and then you're going to answer each one. So the first one is the storming of the Bastille. So find the storming of the Bastille, all right, it's at the top right there. It's got a picture of it. Okay, storming of the Bastille. So, your first one. On July 14th, 1789, an angry crowd marched on the Bastille, a medieval fortress in Paris that housed political prisoners. To many people in France, the Bastille was as a symbol of the monarchy's abuses and tyranny. Angry, unemployed, and hungry Parisians saw it as a place to vent their frustrations. The commander of the Bastille, Marquis de Launay, and his troops resisted for a few hours before raising a white flag for surrender. The Bastille's gunpowder and cannons were seized and the 7 prisoners were freed. Launay was taken away to be arrested and tried by a revolutionary council. However, he was instead pulled away by a mob and murdered. This dramatic action signaled the beginning of the French Revolution. Your decision. Would you join the resistance and storm the Bastille, collaborate with the French monarchy in helping to end the violence, or act as if nothing happened? So circle which one you would do: resist, collaborate, or nothing, ignore, and why. All right. Going on to your next one, the Women's March on Versailles. I would pause in between each one of these so that you can think about it and write your stuff. So I'm going on to the Women's March on Versailles. The revolution had begun, and many people in France were hungry, unemployed, and restless. On October 4, 1789, a large crowd of women demanding bread for their families gathered other angry Parisians, including hundreds of inspired National Guardsmen, and marched toward the Palace of Versailles. The marchers believed the royal family was oblivious to their hardships. When they arrived, soaking wet from the rain, they demanded to see King Louis XVI. The king, aware of the danger, agreed to distribute food from the palace. Some protesters discovered an unlocked gate and broke into the corners of Queen Marie Antoinette, who as an Austrian was particularly despised. In the chaos inside the palace, several protesters and palace guards were killed. Marie Antoinette escaped through a secret passageway. The crowd demanded bringing the king and his family back to Paris to live among the people. Louis conceded to their demands and agreed to go to Paris with the mob, believing it would only be a temporary inconvenience. The event, however, removed forever the aura of invincibility that once cloaked the monarchy. So, your decision. Would you join the resistance and march on the Palace of Versailles? Would you collaborate with the French monarchy in helping to end the violence? Or would you act as if nothing happened? So, choose one of those 3 and give me your reason. All right? Going on to your next one, the Flight of Varennes. Where is it? There we go. The Flight of Varennes. The National Assembly, formed by the representatives of the Third Estate, was working on a new constitution for France. Their proposed limits on the king's authority appalled Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette. Louis XVI, sorry. The royal family also felt like prisoners in their palace in Paris. They decided to leave France and seek refuge in Marie Antoinette's home of Austria, hoping to eventually be reinstated on the throne as absolute monarchs. Before leaving, Louis wrote a manifesto denouncing the revolution. Excuse me. He mistakenly thought that only radicals in Paris were promoting a revolution, that he was beloved, and that he was beloved by rural peasants and the common people. On June 20th, 1791, the royal family quietly left Paris in disguise. They managed to get within 30 miles of the border before being recognized in the town of Varennes. A postmaster recognized the king from his portrait on a coin. A crowd soon gathered, stopped the royal carriage, and forced the family to go back. The incident was devastating for the National Assembly. The king's attempts to flee and his denouncement of the revolution came just as the new constitution was about to be implemented. Now they had to deal with a monarch who was against the constitution and very unpopular with the people. So your decision. Would you join the resistance against the fleeing king, collaborate with the French monarchy in helping to end the violence, or act as if nothing happened? Alright, write your decision down and tell me why. Next, the executions of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. So, following the arrest of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the National Assembly disbanded and was replaced with a new political body named the National Convention. Its first act was to declare France as a republic on September 21st, 1792. Louis was charged with treason. A brief trial was held, and the verdict was unanimous. Louis was guilty. The vote on the death penalty was closer, but it passed. On January 21st, 1793, Louis was driven through the streets of Paris to a guillotine and decapitated. Marie Antoinette had a short trial next. She was accused of numerous crimes, many of them based on rumors. On October 16th, she too was found guilty and guillotined the same day. If you see the picture right there, there's a pretty cool picture of them holding up his head like that. All right. Your decision. Would you join the resistance and call for the royal family's execution, collaborate with the French monarchy in helping to end the violence, or act as if nothing happened? So tell me on here, are you going to join them, resist, collaborate, or ignore? All right? And your final one. Is there one missing over there? Oh, I forgot the September massacres. The September massacres. The king was widely viewed as a traitor for trying to flee the country. He was brought back to the Tuileries Palace in Paris on August 10, 1792. A mob attacked the palace, and the royal family sought refuge under the Legislative Assembly's protection. Fearing further violence, the Assembly placed them under arrest. There was a fear that foreign and royalist armies would attack Paris and that the inmates of the city's prisons would be freed and join them. Radicals called for the preemptive action, especially journalist Jean-Paul Marat, who called on draftees to kill the prisoners before they could flee. The action was undertaken by mobs of the National Guardsmen and tolerated by the city government, the Paris Commune, which called on other cities to follow suit. By September 7, 1792, half of the prison population of Paris had been executed. Some 1,200 to 1,400 prisoners. Of these, 233 were Catholic priests who had refused to submit to the civil constitution of the clergy, a revolutionary law to take power away from the Catholic Church. The great majority of those were killed were common criminals. The massacres were repeated in many other French cities. So, decision. Would you join the resistance in the September massacres, collaborate with the French monarchy in helping to end the violence, or act as if nothing happened? All right? Do that on your sheet and answer those. And finally, the Reign of Terror. The new National Convention was dominated by the Committee of Public Safety. Maximilien Robespierre was its leader and established himself as the leader of the so-called Reign of Terror. We read about this yesterday. Robespierre wanted to rid France of all enemies of the revolution and to protect the virtue of the nation. From September 1793 to July 1794, an estimated 16,000 people were guillotined. Many radicals were executed along with moderates. Most leaders of the French Revolution were now either dead or had fled the Republic. Opposition to Robespierre grew both in the Committee of Public Safety and within the National Convention. When popular committee members Georges Jacques Danton was executed and Robespierre proclaimed himself as the leader of a new religion, caused much resentment. On July 27, 1794, Robespierre was arrested. He was guillotined the following day. Decision. Would you now join the counter-resistance against Robespierre and the Committee of Public Safety, collaborate with the committee in ridding France of its enemies, or act as if nothing happened? So would you join the counter-resistance against Robespierre? Would you collaborate with the committee ridding France of its enemies, or act as if nothing happened? So, on these papers, once you do everything, all right, given the events that took place in the revolution and in today's world, what does it look like when people resist, collaborate, or act as if nothing happened? So, given the events that took place in the revolution and in today's world, what does it look like when people resist, when they collaborate, and when they act as if nothing happened? What impact can that choice have on you as an individual and those around you? So what does it look like when we resist, collaborate, or act as if nothing happened? And how does that impact the people around you? Okay, so you're going to answer those questions. So I've gone over your timeline that you're doing. I've gone over your reading assignment that you're doing. And now your final assignment for the day is going to be to read the very, very, very short section on the Haitian Revolution. All right, it is a whole page, 2 pages that you'll have to read, and then you're going to write your 2 paragraphs: what caused the Haitian Revolution and what happened after. What caused and led up to the Haitian Revolution, and what happened after. What were the effects of it? Okay, I'm going to read that to you now, so you can follow along, and then you just have to do your question with your paragraphs. Okay. So, the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. Nowhere did the example of the French Revolution echo more loudly than in the French Caribbean colony of Saint-Dominique, later renamed Haiti. See the map on the next page. All right. Widely regarded as the richest colony in the world, Saint-Domingue boasted 8,000 plantations, which in the late 18th century produced some 40% of the world's sugar and perhaps half of its coffee. A slave labor force of about 500,000 people made up the vast majority of the colony's population. Whites numbered about 40,000, sharply divided between very well-to-do plantation owners, merchants, and lawyers, to those known as petites blancs, all right, or poor whites. A third social group consisted of some 30,000 gens de couleur libres, free people of color, many of them of mixed race background. Given its enormous inequalities and its rampant exploitation, this Caribbean colony was primed for explosion. In such a volatile setting, the ideas and example of the French Revolution lit several fuses and set in motion a spiral of violence that engulfed the colony for more than a decade. The principles of the Revolution, however, meant different things to different people. To the Grands Blancs, the rich white landowners, it suggested great autonomy for the colony and fewer economic restrictions on the trade. But they resented the demands of the Petits Blancs, who sought equality of citizenship for all whites. Both white groups were adamantly opposed to the insistence of free people of color that the rights of man meant equal treatment for all free people regardless of race. To the slaves, the promise of the French Revolution was a personal freedom that challenged the entire slave labor system. I just lost my spot. In a massive revolt beginning in 1791, triggered by rumors that the French king had already declared an end to slavery, slaves burned 1,000 plantations and killed hundreds of whites as well as mixed-race people. Soon, warring factions of slaves, whites, and free people of color battled one another. Spanish and British forces, seeking to enlarge their own empires at the expense of the French, only added to the turmoil. Amid the confusion, brutality, and massacres of the 1790s, power gravitated toward the slaves, now led by the astute Toussaint Louverture, himself a former slave. He and his successor overcame internal resistance, outmaneuvered the foreign powers, and even defeated an attempt by Napoleon to re-establish French control. When the dust settled in the early years of the 19th century, it was clear that something remarkable and unprecedented had taken place, a revolution unique in the Atlantic world and in world history. Socially, the last had become first, in the only completely successful slave revolt in world history. The lowest order of the society, slaves, became equal, free, and independent citizens. Politically, they had thrown off French colonial rule, creating the second independent republic in the Americas and the first non-European state to emerge from Western colonialism. They renamed their country Haiti, a term meaning mountainous or rugged, in the language of the original Taino people. It was a symbolic break with Europe and represented an effort to connect with the long-deceased native inhabitants of the land. Some, in fact, referred to themselves as Incas. At the formal declaration of Haiti's independence on January 1, 1804, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the new country's head of state, declared, "I have given the French cannibals blood for blood. I have avenged America." And defining all Haitian citizens as black and legally equal regardless of color or class, Haiti directly confronted elite preferences for lighter skin, even as it disallowed citizenship for most whites. Economically, the country's plantation system, oriented wholly toward the export of sugar and coffee, had been largely destroyed. As whites fled or were killed, both private and state lands were redistributed among former slaves and free blacks, and Haiti became a nation of small-scale farmers, producing mostly for their own needs with a much smaller export sector. The destructiveness of the Haitian Revolution, its bitter internal divisions of race and class, and continuing external opposition contributed much to Haiti's abiding poverty as well as to its authoritarian and unstable politics. So too did the enormous independence debt that the French forced on the fledgling republic in 1825, a financial burden that endured for well over a century. Freedom in Haiti came to mean primarily the end of slavery rather than the establishment of political rights for all. In the early 19th century, however, Haiti was a source of enormous hope and of great fear. Within weeks of the Haitian slave uprising in 1791, Jamaican slaves had composed songs in its honor, and it was not long before the slave owners in the Caribbean and North America observed a new insolence in their slaves. Certainly, its example inspired other slave rebellions, gave a boost to the dawning abolitionist movement, and has been a source of pride for people of African descent ever since. To whites throughout the hemisphere, the cautionary saying, "Remember Haiti," reflected a sense of horror at what had occurred there and a determination not to allow political change to reproduce the fearful outcome again. Particularly in Latin America, the events in Haiti injected a deep caution and a social conservatism in the elites who led their countries to independence in the early 19th century. Ironically, though, the Haitian Revolution also led to a temporary expansion of slavery elsewhere. Cuban plantations and their slave workers considerably increased their production of sugar, as that of Haiti declined. Moreover, Napoleon's defeat in Haiti persuaded him to sell the United States the French territories known as the Louisiana Purchase, from which a number of slave states were carved out. Nor did the example of Haiti lead to successful independence struggles in the rest of the 30 or so Caribbean colonies. Unlike mainland North and South America, Caribbean decolonization had to await the 20th century. In such contradictory ways did the echoes of the Haitian Revolution reverberate in the Atlantic world. All right. So you're going to write, we just read that. Feel free to read it again. Rewind me reading it so you can read it again. You're going to write your paragraph on what led to the Haitian Revolution and the effects after. It's pretty straightforward in there, and we read through it, okay? So that's all you've got to do today. Everything will be explained in your email. Tomorrow, we're going to compare all 3 revolutions and talk about everything, okay? So do your timeline, all right? That needs to be done by Monday. Do your analyzing the different events of the French Revolution, and would you resist, collaborate, or ignore? This, comparing the declarations, should have already been done yesterday. And make sure that you have both of your writing assignments done for the past 2 days. The one on the French Revolution and the one on the Haitian Revolution. And also, please make sure you're turning everything in. All right. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will talk to everybody tomorrow.